Well, guys, overnight, Kansas State has doubled their output in the class of 2025 with two back-to-back commits in a stretch of 2 days. Today being a new prospect we're going to talk about in today's video. Before I do, quick reminder, hey, hit that subscribe button. It helps out immensely. We are 20 subs away from 3,000. That's a massive milestone. I'm also getting a cat script tattoo at 3,000. I've said it a bunch, but in case you haven't heard it yet and this is your first time here, I'm getting a cat script tattoo on the left eye, so be sure and hit that sub button because it does help us get closer to that point, and it'll be a lot easier to do while I'm in Kansas City. I'll tell you that. But jumping into the rip here, we got K-State landing a new prospect. That is Xavier Wilson, a 6'1" point guard from the Columbia, Missouri area, playing basketball at Father Tolton right now. For reference in this video, in case you hear me say it, he goes by Zay Wilson, so Zay Wilson is the second commit to Kansas State in this class. A cool addition to see as K-State hits on the local recruiting ties. Now, a couple of different thoughts about the addition. Let me read you some stats and some height weight stuff here real quick. Standing at 6'1", 165. He's a smaller guy, but he's a point guard. I mean, I get that he's definitely like, kind of in that same David Castillo build. He's also backcourt mates with Aaron Rowe, a kid that we talked about pretty heavily on the channel. I mean, shoot, it feels like it's been a year by now, but an early guard that committed to Missouri over Kansas State in the class of 2025. Backcourt mates with Aaron Rowe, a kid that is now a four-star, about 135th in the country. At one point, he was a top 100 prospect, looked really, really promising. Does commit to Missouri over Kansas State. I remember I was in the live video feed for that. But for Zay Wilson specifically, I think there's a lot of good takeaways for this, and I want to give a shout out to On3's Drew Galloway over at K-State Online. Those dudes do a great job. Drew and Mason both do awesome. Derek Young, that whole crew over there. But he had a quote this week in one of their videos. You can go check it out. It's talking about the background behind the Ashton McGee and Zay Wilson recruitment. And he basically said that in his mind, Zay Wilson is at least as good as Aaron Rowe, if not better than Aaron Rowe as a prospect. And I'm not here to say, addition by subtraction, say one dude's worse, one dude's better. I'm not here to do that. But I just thought that gives it a little bit of a background to say these dudes are both really, really talented. And for Zay Wilson, checking in this season as the 32nd ranked point guard in the country and the 10th best player in the state of Missouri, a consensus 3-star across recruiting services. And he's got a chunk of offers. Now, he took an official visit to West Virginia as well for Darian DeVries, and I want to read through the entire offer list here for Zay Wilson. K-State, West Virginia, the two big ones. Then you got Missouri State, UT Arlington, Bradley, Jacksonville, St. Louis, Murray State, shout out John Morant one time, Southern Indiana, East Tennessee, SIU, UTRGV, SEMO, Austin P, Bryant, and Southern Illinois. Now, there's a ton of different schools invested in the recruitment, and it's a kid that was a real late bloomer, similar to Ashton McGee. Both dudes were kind of these late bloomer type prospects where early, if they peaked maybe 6 months earlier, they'd be consensus 4-star type dudes or high 3-star type dudes. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, ratings are just semantics, to be perfectly honest. And I think a good comparison for Zay Wilson, I should have mentioned, I'll be showing his highlights in this video. If I haven't already flipped him on, enjoy. But for Zay Wilson, his game is very smooth, controlled. Like, he looks like a point guard. I don't know how to justify that any different. Like, the kid plays under pace. He makes the right reads. He makes the right plays. Offense and defense, he has some special stuff there. And I do know that a lot of people are higher on Zay Wilson as of right now. Like, has a higher floor, I would say, than Ashton McGee just because of what you've seen already to this point. And for Zay Wilson, I think one comparison that comes to mind, at least when I think about it, maybe not necessarily in terms of players, like how they play the game, but in terms of recruiting numbers. I think a good reference for K-State fans to put in their mind, Iowa State's Tamin Lipsey was Mr. Basketball in the state of Iowa, was a really good basketball player, but didn't have much recruiting numbers out of high school. It's just the nature of the beast for a 6'2 guard. And for Tamin Lipsey, he checked in as a 3-star prospect, number 192 overall in the country, the 31st ranked point guard in his class, and the second ranked player in the state of Iowa. So for reference, Tamin Lipsey checking in as the 31st best point guard in his class, Zay Wilson in his class, the 32nd best player at his position. So it's one thing to say, like, I think a lot of our fan base had gotten frustrated at the coaching staff for not, exhausting these local recruiting ties. And Columbia, I know it's not, an hour away, but it's still close enough that you're 2-3 hours away from, maybe not from Manhattan, I guess from Kansas City's around ballparking it, but probably 4 or 5 hours from Manhattan. And you look at it across the board, it feels like they're going the right direction of building a program with these ads. And I don't want to sell you short and say that this kid's going to have an immediate impact because realistically, K-State has struggled with their freshman recruiting. I mean, even David Castillo, who was chalked up to be a really incredible prospect, has been struggling this season. I think I did a pretty good job in the last video of expressing cautious optimism. I think that's the way I want to say it with both these high school prospects because you look at the classes as a whole that Jerome Tang has added, and there's number-wise guys that look really, really great. And then you look back to last season, you had 3 players come in, and you had Day Ames, Michaela Britch, R.J. Jones. R.J.'s now on a roster at TCU. He transferred in his redshirting. Day-Day's now at Virginia. He's balling. He's doing his thing. He's probably the most successful high school player we've had so far. And then Michaela Britch just hasn't taken a step forward, but he's just been there. That's the best way to say it. And then you look back at the other couple guys, like with David Castillo, he struggled. I think he's a good player eventually, but man, he has struggled this season, and I won't sugarcoat that. So I say all that to say this. With freshmen, it's important to temper expectations and not immediately say, okay, this kid is going to be XYZ thing. He's going to be this, he's going to be this. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. I think with freshmen, you just kind of go in with open expectations and say, you know what? They could develop to be a really good player. Give them a year, give them a redshirt year, give them some time in the non-con, do whatever you can. But I don't think it's as simple to say it. This freshman player is going to be a massive player. The nature of the beast in college basketball right now is if you're not a top 40, top 50 dude, it's tough to justify being ready to play now. I mean, there's teams around the country that add top 50 guys and they don't hit the court. It's just the way it goes for freshmen. But I do think Zay Wilson has a maturity, he has a physicality about his game that I think has really blossomed as of late. And I feel like those late riser type dudes are really, really good assets to have. Like, it's not just one thing to say, okay, you've been this dude since you're 14. You have to build the skills around it. And then when you hit that growth spurt, then when you hit the physicality catch-up type moment, it really pushes your game to new heights. So we'll see what happens with Zay Wilson. I do like the Taman Lipsey comparison, considering it's one thing to say, like with David Gasson, I didn't expect him to be a star by any means. I kind of expected him to be a role player over his career. Now he's a star, one of the best players on our team. This stuff can happen. You got to just develop the guys the right way, pour into them every single day you can. We'll see what happens with both Zay Wilson and Ashton McGee. Also, cool fact that I did hear from On3 as well, it sounded like those two dudes have known each other for years. I mean, 2 or 3 years now. They met on some basketball circuit, something, and they've been good buddies. So kind of cool to see them on visit together at Kansas State. Both committed to Kansas State, a good win for the Wildcats, and something cool to see, beating out West Virginia and a couple of other teams. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Just a quick one on the high school recruiting ranks. I think there is going to be some more news on this front here in a couple of weeks. We'll see what happens down that road. But as of right now, that's going to do it, and I appreciate all the love and support on the channel. I will talk to you all soon. Go Cats!